I recently told you how Australia was going down the wrong path when it came to taxing certain citizens no matter where they lived. And we got pushback on that. So today I'm going to tell you what people said, what's really happening, and what you need to know to protect yourself from a world where taxes are following you everywhere. Let's face it, international tax is complicated. So when we announced that Australia was rolling out what I'm calling a de facto citizenship taxation system for certain Australian citizens, people called it clickbait. They said nothing's changed recently. They said, show me the law, this isn't new. So I'm going to address those particular issues, and I'm even going to read you the paint-dryingly boring text of exactly what's happening so that you can understand. So people said, I didn't read about this. Understand that international tax law changes aren't stuff that's going to be on the front page of the newspaper. They're not going to get a lot of press. Trump's tax reform in the United States, for example, back in 2017, got a lot of press, but the implications on expats and offshore businesses was almost nil. In fact, the only thing I saw about it outside of our international tax circles and the trade publications was an article about 6 months after it passed in a newspaper in the UK talking about how it impacted only people in the UK. There's just not a lot of coverage about international tax because it affects so few people, especially in countries that are further away, like the US or Australia, where not as many people are expats. People say this isn't new, that Australia has always had a system that's taxed people worldwide. And so let's address that. Australia has what's called a residential tax system. If you are a tax resident in Australia because you meet any of a number of tests, and anyone who lives in Australia is pretty much going to meet those tests. So if you live in Australia, you are a tax resident. You pay tax on your worldwide income. So if you have investments, let's say in Singapore, where there's no tax on dividends, Australia will say, well, that's great that Singapore doesn't tax you, but we're going to tax you because you live here. That's different than a territorial system where Singapore, for example, wouldn't tax the money that you made in Australia if you lived in Singapore. So by being a tax resident, you pay tax on everything worldwide, subject to credits and treaties and whatever else may come up, but you're not really going to save any tax overseas by living in Australia. That's different than saying what the United States has. Even if you leave our country merely by holding our citizenship, we're going to tax you as if you lived here. And that's exactly what Australia is now tightening their grips on. People who leave Australia but don't establish a full-time home somewhere else. So digital nomads, for example, are now in the crosshairs that they may have to pay tax in Australia. And I'm going to tell you exactly how that is in the moment. People have said this already happened. Again, no, they are tightening the screws further. Yes, we've been telling you for years that the process of becoming non-tax resident, basically you are a tax resident, you live in Australia, and you can apply this to other countries in the West as well, but you live there and you say, you know what, I don't want to live here anymore. That has become increasingly complicated where you have to cut your ties and you've got to do a whole number of things that our tax pros help Nomad Capitalist clients do. We help people leave countries like Australia, the US, Canada, etc., move to more tax-friendly countries. We've helped people move to 31 different tax-friendly countries. So yes, it's been getting more difficult, but here's the point. People say, this didn't happen recently. This has been going on for years. June 7th, 2023. That's pretty recent. I would say so. That has not been going on for years. That's the date, June 7th, when the screws tightened further. I'm going to show you the exact ruling in a moment. Other people said, my accountant said nothing changed. I've been telling you for years that domestic accountants aren't going to know international tax from a hill of beans. If you want tax advice, there's a very small number of people in the international space that we work with, and we are the general contractor to their subcontractors, helping people basically build an entire international life. We find time and time again, domestic preparers have absolutely no clue what's going on. And so asking your accountant may sound intelligent, but they don't know what's happening. And then people said, well, you just want to get clients. Let me be clear on one thing. We don't monetize our channel. We don't sell sponsorships. I'm already doing okay, guys. We make these episodes for one reason. We had a business first and then created a YouTube channel, then created well, the podcast did come first, but the YouTube channel came second. My goal is absolutely that if you're a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur, that you are going to say, you know what, I don't want to have to call 9 different people to figure out all my offshore banking and moving and tax planning and relocation. Let me go to the guy who spent all these years just figuring it out, and he already has the people in place to manage. And so don't blame me that governments like Australia make it so easy for more people to want to come and become a Nomad Capitalist client. I'm just sharing the news. They're the ones doing it, so don't blame me. Now, people said, well, it's time to renounce Australian citizenship. And I think that what I've said for years is there may come a time when that may be desirable for some folks, whether it's Australian, Canadian, whatever other country decides to be really aggressive on tax. It may just not be worth it. If you don't want to live in that country anymore, why is it so hard just to leave? What I did say, though, was, hey, take this opportunity to get a second passport. There are still ways when you can leave Australia and you can get out of the tax net, but they're just making it harder. And so if you really value the flexibility that they're no longer allowing you, then yeah, it might be a good idea to get a second passport, whether it's citizenship by investment in a matter of months, or whether you have someone in the family tree, or whether you want to go to live in some other country and become naturalized. And 6 months, 2 years, 6 years from now, you look back and say, is Australian citizenship worth it, given the restrictions that are placed on me? And so not so fast on just giving up your Australian citizenship, but this is something that you do want to prepare for. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened and what Australia is doing. Here's kind of the explanation. The interpretation of what is considered an Australian domicile, which is an official term, one of the Australian tax tests, has become stricter. So most countries have a number of different tax tests. One of them is the days test that you've heard about, and we've been telling you for years the days test is not the only thing that matters. What you'll hear is, as long as you don't spend 183 days in the country, then you're fine. So people are like, oh, I can spend 182. No, you have to spend fewer days than that. So the days test to become stricter, but there are other tests that can get you. So domicile, for example, Australia is saying, if you do not establish a replacement domicile, so let's say right now you live in Australia 11 months a year, you take a few holidays. Basically, you have to do essentially that lifestyle, and you've got to move it to another country. So if you're going to say, hey, listen, I don't want to live in Australia anymore, I want to live in Panama, that's tax friendly, I get my Panama residence, I move there, I become tax resident, I have my company wherever, you can do that. And so if that's the kind of lifestyle you want, then I already said there is not at least an immediate cause for alarm. Now, as I said, the camel's nose is under the tent, and so who knows how long before they're like, you know what, all of you could just pay. But if you're willing to basically move your life from one place to another place, not an issue. But what they're saying is, and out of these 4 tests, let me just read it exactly from one of the experts. If you move from country to country such that it cannot be said that you are living in a particular country in a permanent way, your permanent place of abode will not be overseas and you will remain a resident of Australia. This is regardless of whether or not you have any dwellings in Australia or whether Australia more generally can be described as your place of abode. So place of abode is something that's more talked about in New Zealand, but these, there's different terms that different countries use. What that's saying, right? And your eyes kind of might have glazed over that. Why didn't he read us exactly what was said? Because it's a little confusing, quite frankly. But what that says is if you're going to be a digital nomad, if you are perhaps going to follow my trifecta approach, if you thought you were going to get a tax residence where you went and lived in a country for a year, you gave them a little bit, for a month, a year, you give them a little bit of money, and then you're free to go over here for a month, here for 2 months, here for 3 months, with some restrictions on staying one place for too long, all that's going by the wayside. So I already told you. If your goal is moving full-time, put the kids in a private school, come home to dinner every night in one tax-friendly country, that seems to, for now, to be fine. I'm not giving you tax advice because this stuff is being fleshed out, but it seems that will be okay. What they're changing, June 7th, 2023, this has been going on for years, I don't know, this is not new information. June 7th, 2023, listen, at a certain point, guys, there's a reason that billionaires, there's a reason that celebrities, there's a reason that some of the top tier successful people in the world come to work with Nomad Capitalist, because they see 15 years of R&D, 10 years of really intense R&D, an entire team of nearly 60 people who puts their boots on the ground and figures out what actually works, has a network of people, reads boring tax trade journals that if I sat here and read them to you, you'd fall asleep and the YouTube algorithm would practically kick me off the platform. We'd have 3 views reading stuff like, such that it cannot be said. You can trust, you can decide if you want to trust our experience and all the high-level folks, over 1,500 of them now, who have hired us to create and execute their holistic plans, or you want to trust a butt sniffer 783 who commented on our channel. He asked his accountant. If you'd like to get our help, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. There he is again, looking for clients. Who would have known a channel called Nomad Capitalist? The guy was looking to make money. I thought it was a charity. Why can't you tell me how to do it myself so I don't have to pay anybody? This so complicated. So let me pull this up. I'm just going to read you exactly what was said. I'm getting carried away here. And I'm just going to read you. This is the interpretation. ATO finalizes. This is the Australian Tax Office. The Taxman of Australia finalizes TR 2023-1 on residence for individuals. Finalizes the Commissioner's view on tax residence for individuals, but promised government reform to come. The key takeaways are that they released again TR 2023-1 income tax and residence for individuals on June 7th, 2023, after a period of public consultation, et cetera, et cetera. The finalized ruling replaces and consolidates 3 prior ATO rulings following several federal court appeal judgments handed down in 2019 and 20 that considered residency for individuals. Reform to the residence rules for individuals was reformed by the Board of Taxation in 2017 and announced by the former government in 2021, but since there have been no former announcements. And so it goes on to talk about how residence is a key element of Australia's taxation system, as I have told you. But implications under the statutory test remain uncertain and subject to interpretation by court decision and the Commissioner. The guidance in the newly released TR 2023-1 reflects the developments that have occurred in the law since the prior ruling of TR 9817, with a number of high-profile federal court decisions concerning residency handing down in 2019 and 2020. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing has happened since then. Now, here's the updated guidance by the ATO. This sets out the Commissioner's interpretation on the statutory rules of residency for individuals, as well as providing a number of examples to assist taxpayers self-assessing their resident status. It follows a draft ruling, TR 2022 D2, issued on October 6th of 2022, so long ago. The ruling replaces and consolidates the following ATO rulings: IT 2650, residence permanent place of abode outside of Australia; IT 2681, residency in place of business migrants; and TR 9817, residency status of individuals entering Australia. Has the YouTube algorithm crashed off a cliff? I can't keep up. Okay, we're going to keep going. IT 2650 and TR 9817 were withdrawn by the draft ruling with effect from 6th of October 2022. The finalized ruling clarifies that IT 2681 has also been withdrawn from effect from June 7th, 2023. The guidance reflects the updated view of the Commissioner on the 4 tests for residency of individuals as set out in subsection 6 parentheses 1 of the Income Tax Assessment Act of 1936. The first 3 tests relevant to the individual taxpayers are the Ordinary Concepts Test, the Domicile and the 183 Days Test. The 4th test, the Commonwealth Superannuation Test, the Super Test, is relevant to select government employees. Okay. The Commissioner states that no single fact determines the outcome and significance of the facts. By the way, these are not my words, just in case you were unclear. And the significance of facts varies from case to case. Because of this, there are no bright line rules or any single factor that can said to be paramount. We've talked about that for years. It's not just a Days test, it's a combination of all the factors. And some people say, just give me a simple answer how I can do it. Number one, again, I am running a business and we've got people to pay and we have tax professionals we work with and, that should all be done properly. But it's just, you can't do it. Everyone's circumstances are highly unique. And that's why we have our network of very trained experts all around the world. And so it goes on and talks about a number of different court rulings. It talks about a whole bunch of stuff. But the bottom line with this is that with this final, there were these 3 rulings that they consolidated, and now they're basically ending the last one, which reflects domicile. And so the interpretation is that, again, if you do, as I said earlier, if you don't have basically a formal place where you're living, you may well be considered an Australian tax resident. I'm not giving you advice on your particular situation. One person said, you keep saying you're not giving tax advice, but you're advocating people reduce their taxes. I'm advocating you reduce your taxes, but I'm not saying here's exactly how to do it for your situation. That has to be reviewed. I mean, I swear, some of you guys, listen, you should, get the information on YouTube and then have someone help you do it. But don't go to the accountant that's going to talk you out of going offshore. You know how many Australians we've talked to over the years where their accountant's like, no, it's not possible. It is possible. It's just harder and harder. They don't know how to do it, so that's why it's impossible. And so the thing you want to be aware of is if you like the ability to travel the world and you have not been tax resident somewhere else, that could be an issue. Now, there's possibly a two-step approach. There's a number of ways you can handle this, but it seems like we're going in the direction where Australians either move out of the country and pick one place to live, which even if you want to do that, what we have some clients do is, hey, I'll take a year of exploring 4 different places, and I'm going to go check it out, and I'll pick the best of the 4, and then I'll, let's execute the first part of my case. I have a year of support that we provide people when they do that, and at the end of that year, I'll tell you which one I'm going to do, and then we'll execute that residence permit as a second process. But I don't want to commit until I know. Other people commit to one place for 2 years. If they don't like it, they pick the second place. Other people just they know where they want to go. Everyone's scenario is different, but it's going to be less flexible going forward if you're Australian. And I suggested, as I have for years, that other countries might go down this path. So is it a full-scale citizenship-based taxation? No, but it is saying if you've been living in our country and if you are generally a citizen, that we're going to impose more rules on how you live your life, or else you can pay us. And that's exactly the de facto system that I've told you for a couple of years may be coming. Now, someone says this doesn't really apply to the Australians who have moved permanently. Yes, as stated, counselor. Someone else said, I don't see the problem, to be honest. So if you live full-time out of Australia, so what? Yeah, I don't think that just because you used to live in Australia means you should have a never-ending annuity due to them where you pay them until your dying days. Pay when you live there, and if you'd like to leave, you should be allowed to leave. That's been being made more complicated for years, and now even more. And then someone else says, you missed the point. Many wealthy people are moving their assets offshore to avoid paying taxes. The average citizen can't afford to place assets elsewhere. And so moving your assets doesn't really do the job. Moving your assets gives you asset protection. It gives you diversification. You may hold other currencies. Your assets may be in safer banks. You may be out of Australia's bail-in rules or whatever things you don't like about the Australian system, or just generally, hey, let's be diversified, not keep all of our eggs in one sovereign basket. You have to not only move your assets, but your these days if you want to save tax. And so that's what it is we're talking about. The people who want to move out of Australia, they're happy not to use the roads and the bridges and the schools and the firefighters, and they'll go somewhere else and they'll follow whatever tax laws apply where they go. But Australia is being like, no, you can't go. That's what we are talking about. And so hopefully this long, dry explanation about TR 2023-1 explains exactly what Australians should be concerned about.